In the vast frozen expanse of the Arctic, where the aurora borealis dances in the sky, a husky mother named Kala carved out a life for herself and her only pup, Nico. Kala's fur was a shimmering gray, streaked with white, her blue eyes sharp with the wisdom of survival. Nico, a tiny white pup with a single black spot on his ear, was her everything. Their den, a small cave in a snowy hillside, was a sanctuary against the endless cold. Kayla would curl around Nico each night, her warm breath a shield against the icy wind, whispering tales of the great huskies who once roamed these lands. "We are strong, my little one," she'd murmur, her voice a soft growl. "We endure." Nico loved his mother's stories, his tiny tail wagging as he yipped. "Tell me about Papa." Kala's eyes would soften, but a shadow would cross her face. "Your father was the bravest husky I ever knew," she'd say, her voice trembling. "He fought a polar bear to save us, but he didn't come back." Nico would nuzzle closer, sensing her pain, his warmth a silent promise. "I'm here, Mama, but the Arctic is a merciless place." That morning, as Kayla hunted for fish beneath the frozen river, the sky turned an ominous gray. A blizzard was coming, a storm so fierce it could bury entire packs in hours. Kayla felt the first gust sting her fur. She raced back to the den, her heart pounding. "Nico!" she barked, her voice trembling. But the den was empty. Her pup was gone. Kayla's world collapsed. She sniffed the air, catching Nico's faint scent, fish and warmth, leading toward the frozen river. Panic clawed at her chest. The river was a death trap, its ice thin and treacherous. She bolted into the storm, her paws sinking into fresh snow, the wind screaming in her ears. "Nico!" she howled, but the blizzard swallowed her cries. The storm grew fiercer, a white wall of snow and ice that blinded her. Kayla's fur froze in clumps, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She stumbled, her paws bleeding from sharp ice shards, but she pressed on. Memories of Nico flooded her mind. His first wobbly steps, his tiny yips of joy when she returned from a hunt, the way he'd curl into her side at night. "I can't lose you," she growled, her voice breaking. Flashbacks haunted her as she ran. She remembered the day her mate Torin died. A polar bear had attacked their den, its roar shaking the ice. Torin had fought to protect them, his growls echoing as Kayla fled with newborn Nico in her jaws. She'd heard Torin's final howl, a sound of agony that still woke her at night. "I failed him," she whispered, tears freezing on her fur. "I won't fail you, Nico." At the river's edge, Kala found Nico's paw prints, small and frantic, leading to a jagged hole in the ice. Her heart stopped. He'd fallen through. She clawed at the ice, her nails splintering, her howls echoing into the storm. "Nico, hold on!" But the current was swift, and the hole was empty. Kala collapsed, her body trembling, a sob tearing from her throat. The blizzard roared on, indifferent to her pain. Unbeknownst to Kala, Nico hadn't drowned. The current had swept him downstream, spitting him out onto a snowy bank 2 miles away. Shivering, his tiny body soaked, Nico whimpered for his mother. "Mama!" He yipped, his voice barely a whisper. The blizzard buried his cries and the cold seeped into his bones. He tried to stand, but his legs buckled. He was alone, lost in a world of white. Nico crawled through the snow, his tiny paws numb, his black-spotted ear drooping. He remembered Kala's stories of survival, her voice echoing in his mind. "We are strong, my little one." He whimpered, "I'm trying, Mama." But the cold was relentless. He found a small crevice beneath a frozen rock and curled into a ball, his body trembling. "Mama, find me," he whispered, his eyes closing. Back at the river, Kala refused to give up. She followed the current's path, her nose to the ground, sniffing for any trace of Nico. The storm battered her, snow piling on her back, but she pushed forward. "I'll find you," she vowed, her voice raw. Another memory surfaced. Her own mother, a fierce husky who died protecting Kala from a wolf pack. Kala had been Nico's age, alone in the snow until Torin's pack found her. "I survived because of love," she growled. "Nico will too." But the Arctic had more challenges in store. Kala reached a frozen ravine, its icy walls steep and slick. Nico's scent led across it, but the bridge of ice was crumbling. Kala hesitated, her heart pounding. She remembered Torin's death again, how she'd frozen in fear, unable to help. "Not this time," she snarled. She leaped onto the bridge, her paws slipping, the ice cracking beneath her. She scrambled across, her claws digging in, and made it to the other side, just as the bridge collapsed into the abyss. She howled in triumph, but her relief was short-lived. Nico's scent was fading. On the other side of the tundra, a lone emperor penguin named Siku waddled through the storm. Siku was an outcast, his colony lost to a collapsing ice shelf 2 years ago. He'd wandered ever since, his heart heavy with loneliness. Penguins are social creatures, but Siku had no one. No mate, no chicks, no family. He'd once had a chick, a tiny bundle named Mika, but she'd perished in the collapse. Siku blamed himself. He'd been too slow to save her. "I'm a failure," he'd whispered to the wind, his voice cracked from disuse. But then he heard it, a faint whimper carried by the storm. Siku's head tilted, his black eyes scanning the snow. He waddled faster, his flippers slapping the ice until he found Nico, half buried in a drift beneath a frozen rock, his tiny body trembling. "A pup," Siku murmured, his voice trembling with emotion. Nico's eyes fluttered open, meeting Siku's. "Mama," he whimpered, his voice breaking Siku's heart. Siku's instincts kicked in. He'd failed Mika, but he wouldn't fail this pup. He tucked Nico beneath his belly, his feathers shielding the tiny husky from the storm. "I've got you," Siku whispered, tears freezing on his beak. For the first time in years, Siku felt a flicker of purpose. He remembered Mika's tiny chirps, her warmth against him, and how he'd sung to her in the dark. He sang to Nico now, a soft, mournful tune, his voice trembling with grief and hope. But danger loomed. A shadow moved through the storm, an Arctic fox, its eyes glinting with hunger. Siku froze, his heart racing. The fox circled, its teeth bared, sensing easy prey. Siku had never fought before. He was a penguin, not a predator, but he wouldn't let this pup die. He flapped his flippers, squawking loudly, making himself big. The fox lunged, but Siku dodged, shielding Nico with his body. He pecked at the fox's snout, drawing blood, and the fox yelped, retreating into the storm. Siku collapsed, panting, his body bruised but unbroken. "I won't fail you," he whispered to Nico, his voice fierce. Kala caught Nico's scent again, stronger now, mixed with an unfamiliar one. Penguin. She raced through the snow, her legs shaking, until she saw Siku, battered but alive, with Nico tucked beneath him. "My pup!" she growled, her eyes wild. Siku stepped back, revealing Nico, weak but alive. Kala's tail wagged furiously as she licked Nico's face, her warmth reviving him. "Mama," Nico yipped, nuzzling into her fur. Kala's eyes met Siku's, gratitude shining through her exhaustion. "Thank you," she whispered. But the storm wasn't done with them. A massive surge of snow and ice, a storm wall, barreled toward them, the blizzard's final test. Kala scooped Nico into her mouth, but she was too weak to run. Siku saw the danger and made a choice. "Go!" he squawked, waddling in front of them, his small body a shield against the storm. He flapped his flippers, diverting the worst of the snow, giving Kala a chance to flee. Kala ran, Nico dangling from her jaws, her legs burning. She glanced back, seeing Siku disappear into the white. "No!" she whimpered, but she couldn't stop. Nico's life depended on her. She found a small cave, its entrance barely visible, and collapsed inside, shielding Nico with her body. The storm raged outside, but they were safe. For now. Inside the cave, Kayla's guilt overwhelmed her. She'd left Siku behind, just as she'd left Torin. "I'm a coward," she sobbed, her tears falling onto Nico's fur. Nico nuzzled her, his tiny voice firm. "Mama, you're brave. You found me." Kala's heart ached, but Nico's words gave her strength. She had to save Siku. She couldn't lose another. As the storm began to die down, Kala left Nico in the cave, wrapping him in a nest of her shed fur. "Stay here, my love," she whispered, kissing his forehead. She ventured back into the fading storm, her body screaming in protest, and found Siku, half buried in a drift, his body still. No, Kala whimpered, nudging him with her nose. Siku's eyes fluttered open, weak but alive. Pup, safe? He croaked. Kala nodded, tears falling. Because of you. She dragged Siku back to the cave, her strength renewed by gratitude. She curled around him and Nico, her warmth saving them both. Siku's breathing steadied, his lonely heart now full. I found a family, he whispered, a tear rolling down his beak. Kayla nuzzled him, her voice soft. And we found you. Days later, the storm had passed, and the Arctic sun cast a golden glow over the snow. Kala, Nico, and Siku emerged from the cave, a new family forged in the crucible of the blizzard. Kala looked at her pup, then at Siku, her eyes soft. You gave me hope when I had none, she said. Siku waddled closer, his heart lighter than ever. And you gave me a reason to live, he replied. In the coldest of storms, hope can be the warmest light. Kala taught us to never give up. Siku showed us the power of compassion, and together they proved that even in the darkest times, love can find a way. This is a Furry Fable Chronicle. May it remind you to hold on, to help, and to hope.